Foxhole Pride. Foxhole Pride. Foxhole Pride. This is an original instrumental. Soulful music. Soulful music. Soulful music. Enjoy. 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 This is another Impossible production. Impossible production. Foxhole Pride. This is an original instrumental. Soulful music. Soulful music.
100 years later, Negroes still languish
This is another
in the
Impossible
corners of
production.
American society, finds himself exiled in his own land. Exiled in his own land.
Foxhole Pride.
In his own land.
This is an original instrumental.
100 years later, Negroes still languish in the corners of American society, finds himself in exile in his own land. Himself in exile in his own land.
Enjoy. This is another Impossible production. Foxhole Pride. This is an original instrumental. Soulful music.
100 years later, Negroes still languish in the corners of American society.
This is another Impossible production.
Himself in exile in his own land. In his own land.
Foxhole Pride. This is an original instrumental.
Curious lives. What you do now and what you decide now at this age may well determine which way life shall go. How a building is constructed.
This is another Impossible
You
production.
usually have an architect who draws a blueprint. And that blueprint serves as the pattern,
Foxhole Pride.
the guide, as the model for those who are to build the building. And a building is not well erected without a good, sound, and solid blueprint. Now, each of you is in the process of building the structure of your lives. And the question is whether you have a proper, a solid, and a sound blueprint. And I want to suggest some of the things that should be in your life's blueprint. Number one in your life's blueprint should be a deep belief in your own dignity, your own worth, and your own somebodyness. Don't allow anybody to make you feel that you are nobody. Always feel that you count. Always feel that you have worth. In your life's blueprint, you must have as a basic principle the determination to achieve excellence in your various fields of endeavor. You're going to be deciding as the days and the years unfold what you will do in life, what your life's work will be. Once you discover what it will be, set out to do it and to do it well. And I say to you, my young friends, that doors are opening to each of you. Doors of opportunity are opening to each of you that were not open to your mothers and to your fathers. And the great challenge facing you is to be ready to enter these doors as they open. Ralph Waldo Emerson, the great essayist, said in a lecture back in 1871 that if a man can write a better book or preach a better sermon or make a better mousetrap than his neighbor, even if he builds his house in the woods, the world will make a beaten path to his door. That hasn't always been true, but it will become increasingly true. And so I would urge you to study hard, to burn the midnight oil. I would say to you, don't drop out of school, and I understand all of the sociological reasons why we often drop out of school. But I urge you, in spite of your economic plight, in spite of the situation that you are forced to live so often with intolerable conditions, stay in school. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. In exile in his own land. In his own land.
Peace, family. Peace, peace, peace. QI Critical Thinking is back in the building again. And let me do some shout outs to the people I love so much for coming through and supporting, especially on this great day where we're honoring a true king. Dr. Martin Luther King is one of my favorite leaders because Dr. Martin Luther King just didn't have eloquent speech. Dr. Martin Luther King actually put his words to action. Dr. Martin Luther King created the Fair Housing Rights Act for us, as well as we got the rights to ride the bus, ride any and sit in any parts of the bus with the assistance, and also with the assistance and help as well. We don't want to not take away anything. We don't want to take anything away from our sister Rosa Parks. Dr. Martin Luther King also is the reason why we can walk into these restaurants today, sit down with everyone else, eat and order. Dr. Martin Luther King also created, and he received a Nobel Peace Prize for the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And the Civil Rights Act of 1964 has been all over the media in the year 2019 with Byron Allen and with Trump and Comcast, because the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which was enacted, like for us as Indians, because Martin Luther King also found out that, the majority of us are not African Americans. We are Indians. And let me play this real quick for you, and then I'm going to proceed.
100 years later,
Listen carefully.
the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. In exile in his own land. In his own land.
That's right. The Negro is still languished in the corners and finds himself in exile in his own land. Okay, the 1964 Civil Rights Act was enacted for us as Indians because he found out that we are the indigenous. The original Indians are black. Okay, so I'm gonna read a little bit about the biography of Martin Luther King. I'm not gonna take too long. I could not let the night pass without honoring a true king, someone a leader, because we have a lot of great leaders who can speak. We have a lot of great leaders who can gather people. However, we don't have a lot of great leaders in which have actually gotten laws and rights enacted for us. So, that alone sets Martin Luther King out on a path by himself. I'm also going to let you all know what the 1964 Civil Rights Act is, as I have done many times before. But Dr. Martin Luther King's last 31 hours, the story of his final prophetic speech. See, that 1964 speech, which is a cliplet I just played, the Negro finds himself in exile in his own land, was primarily one of the reasons why he was killed. A lot of people don't know that him and Malcolm X were planning to merge together and work together because Malcolm had went to Mecca, and in Mecca they taught him that, like he did not have African origins. And this is why he said, we didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us, meaning that we were already here. We've been here. But let me just, continue. And that powerful duo, that duo right there would have been unstoppable for us. Martin Luther King was unstoppable for us. And this is one of the reasons why when you find a lot of people they not only assassinated him, but they also, these days are trying to assassinate his character because they don't want us to produce any more leaders like Martin Luther King. They want us to fear or think that, we can't do it, or it wasn't of value or importance. So on the eve of his assassination, King delivered an improvised masterpiece. I've been to the mountaintop. In it, the civil rights leader foresaw his own death. And
why build a new high tensile steel
sorry about
chassis
that.
Just to lower the driving position 10 millimeters? Because when you're crafting performance, no measure is too extreme. The Lexus LC and LC Hybrid. Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer.
Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
All right. While the man who would assassinate him the next day was holed in the New Rebel Motel, hundreds of people were filtering into Mason Temple in Memphis, Tennessee, to hear Martin Luther King Jr. speak. Outside, a thunderstorm was raging. The people clustered in the front of the church, shedding their rain-spattered jackets as they took their seats. Then they waited. King was an hour and a half late, pausing a moment as he stepped to the rostrum, or I guess that's supposed to be the podium. He peered over a welter of microphones. As TV cameramen flooded him with light, his face took a luminous sheen, but something seemed amiss. After he greeted the audience, he lauded them for braving the storm, coming to the rally, showing that they had the backbone to carry on the Memphis sanitation workers strike. Because this was like during that Memphis sanitation strike era. In the words of the following, King had nothing more to say about the storm. Yet you could say the storm still had something to say to him. Time and again, wind gusts punched open two large window fans near the ceiling of the auditorium. The shutters clacked shut each time, startling King. So, King was startled, that night. He could feel something. Every time there was a bang, Billy Kyles recalled later, he would flinch. King looked harried and tired and worn and rushed. Observed one minister. He had a sore throat and was sleep deprived. By the end of the speech that he would deliver that night, everyone in Mason Temple would know another reason why he seemed out of sorts. So, like King foresaw that, something was going to happen to him. I don't know, like if, he had been warned or what, but I'm pretty sure, like when you're spiritual, like King definitely had a calling over him. And, he definitely was in touch with the ancestors. And this is one of the reasons why, like he done what he done. And I can understand, because as you hear, like, and I'm not comparing myself to King, I'm just saying that, sometimes when them ancestors put that calling or put that your purpose or your assignment on you, it's like you can't run even if you want to. If you try to run, things get bad for you, and so you end up, falling back in place anyways. So King definitely had that calling. And, the ancestors definitely let him know that, he was about to transition into greater things. King graduated on April 4th, 1968. He was born January 15, 1929. Martin Luther King Jr. was the most important voice of America's civil rights movement, which worked for equal rights for all. He was famous for using his nonviolent resistance to overcome injustice, and he never got tired of trying to end segregation laws that prevented Blacks from entering certain places such as restaurants, hotels, and public schools. He also did all he could to make people realize that all men were created equal. And when you say all men, you're not just talking about the gender male, you're talking about human. Okay, because of his great work in 1964, and this is the 1964 Civil Rights Act. In 1964, King received the Nobel Peace Prize, the youngest person to ever receive this high honor. King was also a Baptist minister. He was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee, when he was just 39 years old. His birthday is now observed as a national holiday on the third Monday in every January. Okay, so that's a little bit about King's biography, and I'm going to play a few more clips here, and I'm not going to hold y'all long. It's just that, I could not dare not, observe a few minutes to honor, like, if I like the greatest civil rights, the greatest leader, the greatest, leader, black leader that I think we've ever had. This is my favorite by all means, because he didn't just speak, he put his speech into action. So let me just go over a few more things. Martin Luther King Jr. was an activist pastor who promoted and organized nonviolent protests. He played a pivotal role in advancing civil rights in America and has won Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts to fight racial inequality in a nonviolent manner. Dr. Martin Luther King's activities, he brought publicity to major civil rights efforts, promoted nonviolent violence during protests, contributed in founding the African American Civil Rights Movement, which, you know, we're not African, but leaders in the Montgomery bus boycott of 1955, was one of the founders of the South Christian Leadership Conference and its first president, fought against segregation in Albany, Georgia, helped organize nonviolent protest actions in Birmingham, Alabama, was one of the organizers of the March on Washington in 1963, where he delivered his I Have a Dream speech, helped organize Selma to Montgomery marches in 1965, worked on segregation housing in Chicago, and that's like somewhat where that equal housing rights thing came from. Fought against poverty in America, fought against America's involvement in the Vietnam War, planned the Poor People's Campaign, a national occupation of Washington, D.C., but was assassinated before this could happen. So as you can see, King had a lot of great things about him. And yes, he did have a name change. Dr. Martin Luther King was actually born Michael King and was the middle child of Roberta King and Michael King Sr. Both the King and Williams family had his roots in rural Georgia, where Martin Jr.'s grandfather served as a minister before he took over the small, struggling Ebenezer Baptist Church and made a great success of it. His son-in-law, Michael King Sr., later took over a pastor after his death in 1931. In 1934, after attending the First Baptist World Alliance in Berlin, Georgia, Michael was so inspired, he dedicated to change both his and his son's name to Martin Luther King in honor of Martin Luther, the German reformer. So there you go. And let me play a few more clips. And I just want to come through and, honor the King today. One of our greatest civil rights activists, and also, give you a little bit about his biography and history. So, I'm going to play this little clip, and then, I want to say love, peace, happiness. Let me speak to the room. I think I spoke to
100 years later.
Everybody gone, so.
The Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land.
Peace, family. Honoring Martin Luther King. Peace, love, and hair grease. I'll see y'all later. I'm out. Yeah, that's true. Stop the violence side. Stop the violence side in the building. My homegirl, Mississippi Magnolia in the building. My artist friend, Lady T, up in this building. Shorty C up in this building. My beautiful friend, Shining Star in the building. Monica G. Davis up in this building. Early 40s up in the building. Yeah, thank y'all for coming out and supporting. Thank y'all for showing a little love to our King, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Every day he should be celebrated, but today is his day. Make sure y'all like, share, and subscribe. And by all means, if there is any content, any topics you would like to cover, because I like to cover things that we can progress from. I like to cover things that we can grow from. Like Martin Luther King says, we have to carry on the legacy. So I like to provide us with tools, to provide our youth with tools so we can continue to carry on the legacy.
Soulful music.
That's right, Stop the Violence Shy. Stop the Violence Shy said, may he be eternally blessed for all of his work and sacrifice. And I say amen to that. Yes, both Malcolm and Martin foresaw their own death, and they both spoke about it beforehand. That's right, Stop the Violence Shy. I say, even though I'm Mayan, I still, show respect. It's all about the ancestors. Rose Gold Lightly has entered and is in the building. That's right. Happy Martin Luther King's Day.
Soulful music.
May we gain the spirit of our ancestors during the Civil Rights Act. May we continue to walk in the light of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. May we get more laws, more rights, and more things enacted for our progress. May we continue to rise to the top of the mountaintop. All in honor of our ancestors who fought so hard. They fought hard for us to vote. They fought hard for us to walk into these restaurants and eat. They fought hard for us to be able to go to the same school. They fought hard. So as they have fought, so shall we.
Soulful music.
100 years later, Negro is still languishing in the corners of American society, finds himself in exile in his own land,
When you discover what you're gonna be in life, to set out to do it as the God Almighty called you at this particular moment in history to do it. And just don't set out to do a good Negro job, but do a good job that anybody could do. Don't set out to be just a good Negro doctor, a good Negro lawyer, a good Negro school teacher, a good Negro preacher, a good Negro barber, a beautician, a good Negro skilled laborer. Or if you set out to do that, you have already flunked your matriculation exam for entrance into the University of Integration. Set out to do a good job and do that job so well that the living, the dead, of our unborn couldn't do it any better.
This is another Himfosol production.
our destiny is tied up in the destiny of America. For the pilgrim falls standing in Plymouth, we with him. For the pilgrim falls standing in Plymouth, we with him.
All the foods that we think of as our traditional holiday meal. And that's why we celebrate Thanksgiving, in order to commemorate the unity between the Indians, me, the Native Americans, and the early English settlers. Recall? Class? Yeah! That's right. Pilgrims, very good.
Yeah.
is an original instrumental.
Oh, you'd love to be a street sweeper. Sweep streets like Michelangelo painted pictures.
Enjoy.
Sweep streets like Beethoven performed music. Sweep streets like Leontine Price sings before the Metropolitan Opera. Sweep streets like Shakespeare wrote poetry. Sweep streets so well that all the host of heaven and earth will have to pause and say, here lives a great street sweeper. This is a struck his out well. If you can't be a pine on the top of the hill, be a scrub in the valley. But be the best little scrub on the side of the reel. Be a bush if you can't be a tree. If you can't be a highway, just be a trail. If you can't be the sun, be a star. For it isn't by signs that you win or you fail. Be the best of whatever you are. We already have some noble examples.
This is an original instrumental.
Black men and black women who demonstrated to us that human nature cannot be cataloged. They in their own lives have worked through long and desolate nights of oppression, and yet they've risen up and plunged against cloud-filled nights of affliction, doing blazing stars of inspiration. So from an old slave cabin of Virginia's hill, Booker T. Washington rose up to be one of America's great leaders. He lit a torch in Alabama. Darkness fled in that setting. Yes, you should know this because it's in your own city. From a poverty-stricken area, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Marion Anderson rose up, be the world's greatest contralto, so that a Toscanini could say that a voice like this comes only once in a century, and Sibelius of Finland could say,
Shining stars, that's up to you. That's up to you, boo. That's up to you.
And the arms of a mother who could neither read nor write, Roland Hayes rose up to be one of the world's great sailors and carried his melodious voice into the palaces and mansions of kings and queens. From crippling circumstances, there came a George Washington Carver to carve for himself an imperishable niche in the annals of science. There was a star in the diplomatic sky, and then came Ralph Bunce, the grandson of a slave preacher. He reached up and grabbed it and allowed it to shine in his life with all of its scintillating beauty. There was a star in the athletic sky. Then came Jackie Robinson in his day, and Willie Mays in his day with their powerful bats and their calm spirits. Then came Jesse Owens with his sweet and dashing feet. Then came Joe Louis and Muhammad Ali with their educated fists. All of them came to tell us that we can be somebody, and to justify the conviction of the poet. Fleece and locks and black complexion cannot forfeit nature's claims. Skin may differ, but affection dwells in black and white the same.
Our destiny is tied up in the destiny of America. For the pilgrim called landed in Plymouth Freeway. For the pilgrim called landed in Plymouth Freeway.
Enjoy.
All the foods that we
This is another Infant Soul production.
But I know somehow that only when it is dark enough can we see the stars.
This is the original instrumental.
I see God working in this period of the 20th century in a way that men in some strange way are responding. Something is happening in our world.
Peace, family. Love, peace, and hair grease. Hi, Nick.
And wherever they are to
Nick, nah, we ain't got time for that. We know about the COINTELPRO trying to assassinate Martin Luther King's character.
Atlanta, Georgia, Jackson, Mississippi, Memphis, Tennessee.
So we don't have time for that. That didn't come out while he was living, and he still produced the 1964 Civil Rights Act, in which they're now trying to take away. He still got us where we can go into restaurants and sit in the front of the bus. So, you know, it's way too late for that. It's way too late for that. Way too late for that. There's no other black leader who has done anything like get us laws and stuff passed, like bring things to the table. Anybody can speak. Martin Luther King had action. So everybody makes their share of mistakes. So if that was the case, in which we can't prove it, but it never came out beforehand, I'm still honoring King for the things that he had that is still here, like the 1964 Civil Rights Act.
Racial injustice long enough.
Y'all always trying to strip us of our black leaders, the ones who do something. And we want to honor people who don't do anything but talk.
Noble realm of justice and brotherhood.
But love, peace, and hair grease, family. And I'll see you later. And remember, honoring a true king, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Just
Peace.
based on a lot of noise. It is a struggle to save the soul of our nation. No nation can rise to